All right, so we've looked at slope and rate of change, right? And that idea of slope is kind of telling us where our graph is going on the coordinate plane. So we're going to now start looking more at, okay, I have linear equations, right? First off, what are those, right? So we'll talk about that. And secondly, how do I graph those? And they have different forms that kind of help us graph them in different ways. So today we're going to stay focused on slope-intercept form and how do I use that and graph that. So a couple of vocab things just to kind of help us once we get into slope-intercept form is, first off, what is a linear equation, right? So this is any equation where the variable is only raised to the first power, right? So we'll look at that, but basically it's just saying that if it was x, it'd be something, the formula would just have an x like that, or a y, that kind of stuff. Typically, we're going to stick with x as kind of our independent variable that we're worried about. And the other thing is the y-intercept, right? This is just my point where the graph crosses the y-axis. All right, so I'm going to look at slope-intercept form, right? Just the general form and talk about what these different things mean. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So looking at that, you're probably thinking, what the heck does any of that mean? All right, so we have a couple of things, right? This, not what I wanted. This x and this y are always there. All right, they're always going to be in every slope-intercept form, every form of linear equation that we talk about. What's important is things like m, right? So m is my slope, and then b is my y-intercept. All right, so there's a few different things that we want to work on. And then now that we know what these numbers mean when I'm looking at this graph, right? So the first is just identifying slope and y-intercept. This is going to be key a little bit later on when we talk about graphing, right? We need to know what's my slope, what's my y-intercept. So if I look at this equation, y equals 3/2 times x minus 2. And I just want to know what's the slope, what's the y-intercept. I'm going to look at it and say, well, my slope has to be with my x, right? So there's my slope. My slope is going to be 3/2, right? And then my y-intercept is kind of what's attached to it, right? What's being added or subtracted. So in the case of when it's being subtracted, you have to make sure you bring that subtraction along, and so that my slope, or my y-intercept, is -2, right? The sign comes with it. So if it's subtractions, it's negative. If it's adding, we're just going to do a positive number. All right. So I can kind of pull things out, and then I'm going to use that really when I want to start graphing later. The other thing we're going to look at is, well, how do I write an equation, right? So writing an equation in slope-intercept form is really, I just need to know what's the slope, what's the y-intercept. I'm going to plug that in. All right, so I'm going to keep that kind of, there we go. Now I can see my general form. So if I look here, right, I'm going to start writing this equation. Well, I know I need y equals, right, because that y and the equal sign are always there. So I look up here and I say, well, what's my slope? Well, my slope is that -5/3. So -5/3. That x is always there. And then I look at my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 4. And it's a +4. So I'm going to have that as +4. Right? So there's my equation. It's as simple as that, right? Just plug in things and you've got your equation. So sometimes it's really easy, right, when they give you the stuff. Other times, if you're given a graph, right, it's still pretty simple. I just have to work and find my slope and my y-intercept. So writing an equation from a graph, right, I want to find the slope, and I want to find the y-intercept, and then it looks very much like this example up here, right? So if I look here and I say, well, what's my slope? So I go back to kind of what I did yesterday, and then I have these two nice points, and I'm going to talk about my rise, right? So up 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, 2, 3, right? So my slope is 4/3. And I look, where do I cross this y-axis, right? There's my y-axis. I'm crossing down here, so I'm going down 1, 2, 3. So -4, right? So -4. Now I just plug that in, just like I did before, right? That y is always there. I do my slope, so 4/3 x, my y-intercept, -4. And there I have my equation. So the last way I can talk about writing the equation in slope-intercept form is, what if they give me 2 points, right? So instead of it being on a graph, or they give me the things, right, I have 2 points. So I'm still going to find the slope, right? I'm going to do that with that slope formula, right? M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So fill in what I know. Then I'm going to plug in one of the points, right, for x and y. And I'm going to solve for b. Then I can write the equation. All right, so if I start with finding my slope over here, and we have x1, y1, x2, y2, and I can just plug those in and say, well, what is -8 minus 1 divided by 5 minus 2? And I just fill that in, right? -8 minus 1 is -9. 5 minus 2 is 3. So there I can simplify that, right? -9 divided by 3 give me -3. So now I know my slope is -3. So if I were to start filling in my equation, right, I know I have, let's start that right here, all right, y equals -3x plus b. So the question is, how do I know what b is? So I can find this by saying, well, I know that there's 2 points on this graph that I know, right, 2, 1, and 5, -8. I can do that kind of that third step. I can plug in those points, right? So if I were to go over here and say, well, I know that y is 1 when x is 2, and now I have an equation that I can solve, right? So 1, -3 times 2 give me -6 plus b, add 6, so 7 is b. And now I can take this and I can say, well, now I know that I'm going to add 7 and get. So last thing, talking about graphing, right? So when I am graphing a line, right, I'm going to start at the y-intercept, and then I'm going to use the slope to find another point. Once I have 2 points, I can connect the dots, right? So if I look at my equation, right, so my slope, right, always with the x, so my slope is 2, and then my y-intercept, so what's added or subtracted. So in this case, it's -1, so I need to make sure I bring that negative over. So I'm going to start at the y-intercept, right? So my y-axis is here. So I'm going to start at -1, and my slope is 2. I know I can use that idea of rise over run, right? So if I go up 2, but now the question is, what do I do if I don't have a fraction slope? So the key to remember is, anytime you have a whole number, all right, I can make a fraction by doing 2 over 1, right? 2 divided by 1 would be 2. So I'm going to go up 2 and then over 1 to the right, because I always want to run to the right. And then I connect those dots, right? And I have my line, and that's as simple as that for graphing slope-intercept form.